What's going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about. You are not going to want to miss this, so let's get straight into it. Right now, we are looking at the Triple Q's daily time frame, and we talked about this in the last video on how this could be a bear trap, and that's exactly what happened. So if you got puts on Friday that expired today, sorry, you got cooked. Okay, just got to put it out there. Okay, so looking at where the Triple Q's are, and considering that we somewhat retested this resistance at around 500 502 range, surely we could be seeing some downside from this point. I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think we're going to see more upside, and we're going to talk about why in a bit, and it mostly revolves around what we're looking at on the NQ. But in regards to where we can go from this point on, I am looking at a move towards 508, okay, which is pretty much where this gap fill is. I do think the Triple Qs is going to head towards this 508 target before we see another move down. Now, just in case I am wrong, which is very much possible, is rare, but it's possible, right? Just in case I am wrong and we just so happen to see downside from this point on, I would like to see us break below 597. If we get below 597 and actually hold, then we're looking at a move towards 592. And then from there, if we do head further down, I would be looking at a move as low as about, I keep saying 485. So 485 right here is where you have your support right here. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to a move to the downside if we are talking about downside. I will say that we do need some insane news for that to happen, because if we're talking about support, it's very, very tough to get past this area right here. You have a lot of turbulence happening here. You guys know how I feel about turbulence, right? Bulls, bears, they're just fighting it out here. So really, really tough for us to break down without some type of news. So I would definitely pay attention to news, whether it's Nvda earnings, whether it's Jerome Powell, whatever the case may be, Donald Trump, I don't know. In order for us to really just break down, I do imagine that we're going to need some pretty bad news. But I do think we're going to continue to bounce from here and head as high as about 508 before we see another potential move back towards the downside. And so another reason why I think we're going to continue to head higher is the NQ. Plain and simple, we talked about this in the last video. NQ is still playing within this rising wedge pattern, so still looking good for potential upside from this point on. Now, in regards to where we can go from here, we're looking at a move as high as about 20,980, 21K. This area is very illiquid. We do need to clear this area out. There's no structure here, so I do imagine that at some point we're going to want to retest this 21K range. It's also important to note this is the only time we tested this area. Any other time we just completely broke through it. We broke through it here, we broke through it here. So I do imagine that we're going to want to make this move happen all over again and pretty much revisit these guys, retest, and then this will pretty much align with that move towards 508 on the Triple Qs. We hit this and then potentially break further down. It's also important to note that we are still having a hard time getting past these guys right here. We talk about this all the time in multiple videos, where these guys right here are really, really holding the NQ back from breaking further down. I mean, you see it here, just a bunch of turbulence, a lot of bulls, a lot of bears just fighting in this area. You attempted to break down here, you failed. You attempted to break down here, you failed, and now you're attempting again and you're somewhat failing. I wouldn't say it's a complete failure, because there's still a chance we're not like really in the clear just yet, but until we break further down and stop these guys out of their position, it's really tough for me to be very bearish, I will say. Just extremely bearish, or lean more bearish than bullish. So until we stop these guys out of their position, and now not only that, stop these guys out of their position, and then break below this rising wedge, therefore confirming that it is a rising wedge, I will have to remain or lean more bullish than bearish. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to the NQ. You really want to see us just pretty much break below this area and just stop these guys out of their position. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to the NQ. So ES is pretty much at resistance. So there is a lot of mixed signals, but as you guys can see here, we rejected here, we broke through, we retested today at around 5,920, and we're pretty much having a hard time. It is after hours, so take it with a grain of salt, but we're having somewhat of a hard time just breaking above this area, and that can easily change at market open. We'll have to see, or it can change overnight. So if we do just decide to break down from this point, as long as we're within this rising wedge, we are still safe to be bullish, okay? So we could look at a move like this where we pretty much retest the bottom of this rising wedge, and then come market open, we start heading back up, maybe retest 5,920, or we head much higher and pretty much reach previous highs all over again and forming some type of double top scenario, more or less. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. But to just keep in mind that this area again still a liquid. At some point in time, I do imagine we're going to want to revisit this area. So I imagine this week will be the perfect opportunity to do so. Not only that, but as long as we're above 5,900, it's tough for me to even lean bearish. So I would take that level into consideration. We're above 5,900. That is a good sign. We closed above it. That's a good sign for the bulls. We just need to clear this area at around 5,920 in order to see more upside. So if we do just so happen to head further down overnight, as long as we're within this rising wedge, you can mark it on your charts. As long as we still remain within here, I wouldn't panic. Okay, I just wouldn't panic. If we break down, then you might have room to worry. We'll see. Okay, but that's what I'm looking at in regards to the ES SPY. And so we talked about the SPY, and so the SPY is giving a different signal from the ES, and this is why I said don't necessarily panic if you do see the ES drop overnight, because the SPY is mounting support. Okay, the SPY is pretty much mounting support, and then you have somewhat of a reversal hammer pattern right here. It's not the cleanest, but if it looks like the pattern, assume that it is until proven otherwise. And so we talked about this key level at 585. We talked about this where I wanted to see the SPY revisit 585 and then bounce from there, and that's exactly what we got. Okay, so we got 585 and we bounced from there, and so the next move I'm looking at from here is a potential move towards 592, which is pretty much this gap fill, and we create some type of lower high, and then we start to head lower. Now another scenario is that we revisit previous highs, and then we form some type of double top scenario where you will have your top here, and then you will form somewhat of another top here in this area somewhere around here. Your neckline will be at around 585, and then you break further down. And then your third scenario will be just making new highs all over again at around 605, 606 range. So those are your three scenarios. I am leaning more so on the lower high scenario, and again, I could be wrong. There's two other scenarios you could be looking out for, but I want you guys to keep in mind that gaps have very strong support and resistance. Okay, if you pay attention to how gaps work, you either blow past them or you just reject them. Okay, plain and simple. So we can do something like this. So this is the move I'm more so leaning towards. We'll have to see. We'll wait and see until tomorrow. I still stand by what I say. If the market continues to pump into Nvidia earnings, I think Nvidia earnings is going to be the reason that the market tanks. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the YouTube channel, your daily time frame, we zoom out. This is the channel that we've been trading in for quite some time. Here, we rejected here, bounced here, bounced here. So I recommend to mark this on your charts. That way, it's easy trades. You hit the top of this channel, you reject, you trade down. You hit the bottom, you do calls. You hit the top, puts, calls, so on and so forth. And then this smaller channel will be your 4-hour channel or rising channel. So this is pretty much how we essentially caught somewhat of a top here. It was pretty much a no-brainer. You hit double resistance up here. You hit double trend. You hit both the top of both of these channels, and then you reject it from here. So that's pretty much how I'm going about trading the SPY or looking at the SPY long term. So right now, things are looking a little sketchy. I would definitely be careful in regards to just holding calls for the long term in regards to SPY. I would love to see more downside. As long as we hold 585, it's pretty somewhat bullish. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at in regards to the SPY. Now let's look at Bitcoin real quick. Bitcoin, we talked about this in the last video. Bitcoin is within this symmetrical triangle. It broke out of the symmetrical triangle, and I'm not a fan of this move right here. It's just, anytime you see a pattern, anytime you break out of a pattern, you kind of want it to just do its thing like right away and then retest. But Bitcoin broke out and it's just doing this. And so I will say be careful with Bitcoin. If it starts to roll over, which is very much possible from here because it is showing signs that it wants to roll over. If it does one of these moves, I would be very cautious. And if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator on the market, we could be looking at a drop. Okay, so just be careful. It's not exactly bearish yet, but it's not full-blown bullish either. I mean, you would think so since we broke out of the symmetrical triangle, but the fact we're just mounting here and just consolidating is pretty annoying, I will say. So I do have a target of 95K on Bitcoin. We got pretty close today, but if we're talking about the measured move for the symmetrical triangle, it can go as high as 99K. But again, this move annoying. All right, so that's all I have for Bitcoin. Let's talk about some stocks. All right, so first stock I want to look at is Apple. And so we talked about Apple in our last video, and we talked about the symmetrical triangle. You rejected here, you rejected here, bounce, bounce, so on and so forth. You broke out. I mean, Apple just gave the cleanest setup. So congratulations to the Discord members who traded this with me. Cleanest of setups. We broke out, retested the top of the symmetrical triangle. I mean, super clean retest, right? And then you broke out again, and then now you're mounting 227.5. And so as long as we stay above 227.5, we'll say 227 to be like really safe. You're pretty much clear to go. I will say that the measured move for this, and for those of you who are new to the YouTube channel, how you measure a pattern move is you just measure the open and the close of the pattern, and then you bring it to the breakout point. And so if we're talking about potential upside from this point on, you're looking at a move as high as 242 on Apple. I don't know what's going to cause that. It's not like Apple has earnings coming up or anything. Maybe the market just goes ballistic, or maybe Apple just gets its own individual news. I don't know. But right now, if we're talking about the measured move for the symmetrical triangle, we can go as high as 242. I'm going to lowball it and say about 235. That's my low ball target, but we can, if we're being optimistic, we can talk about a move all the way as high as 242. So Apple looks good, plain and simple. It just looks really, really good. I have no complaints about it. 227.5 is the level you want to pay attention to in regards to Apple. Tesla. So Tesla, I don't have much for Tesla. I will say it's kind of like this area right here is just weird. But what I will say, if we're talking about the options chain, and we're looking at Tesla, this guy right here, this 350 call for November 22nd, and I showed this in the Discord, the premiums keep going up. So when I first saw this, the premiums was only at like 50 million. And then I showed it to the Discord, and it was at like 75 million. Now it ended the day at 103.5 million. So 350 calls, I would definitely pay attention to those in regards to Tesla. I wouldn't be surprised it goes as high as about 370, but if we're talking about lowballing, I would say about 355, 360 on Tesla. So again, whales keep just loading up on this 350 contract, so definitely pay attention to this and watch how Tesla moves tomorrow. But tomorrow, the rest of the week, so on and so forth, because they are just relentless right now. They're just constantly loading up on this one particular contract. So don't be surprised if Tesla does like some huge gap up overnight. Something to pay attention to. So that's really all I have for Tesla. I don't really have much else. I just want to show you guys that whales are just really like snorting that thing. All right, so Amazon. Discord members want me to go over Amazon. You guys are like in love with this thing, so let's talk about it. Amazon, falling wedge pattern. All right, falling wedge pattern. I like Amazon. Amazon looks absolutely great. It closed above 200. It's still holding that 200 level. Amazon looks great. Discord member pointed out a potential double bottom here. The reason why we say potential is because the neckline isn't broken, and I would like to see a bigger bullish candle, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm pretty sure it will form out. We'll see. But if we're talking about a breakout on Amazon, I would like to see a break above 205, therefore confirming that this is a double bottom. You'll have your bottom here, and if we get a bullish candle come tomorrow, then we'll have somewhat of a bottom here, and then I would like to see a neckline break. So something like this. Where is it? Where is it? I am blind today. Here we go. So something like this, where you just break out, you retest 205, and then you head higher. Now, if we're talking about a target in regards to Amazon, I don't know how it's going to get there, but if we're just like talking about a short-term target, we can say 210. Okay, 210. 210 will be your gap fill right here. You have a huge gap open, so that will be my first target. But if we're talking about like a big target, guys, if we zoom out, right, you guys see it here, right? We rejected this trend line a lot, over and over. We continue to reject this, right? We can head as high as about 230 on Amazon. Now, again, I don't know how it's going to get there. I don't know if it's going to get there anytime soon, but I would definitely be looking out for some type of dated contracts. Maybe watch what Big Money is doing with this. But 210 if we're lowballing it, 220 if we're like, all right, it can definitely go higher, and 230 if we're like being really optimistic. So definitely look out for that 210 target. If you want to jump in right away, I would look for this break of this this falling wedge pattern. But if you want to be safe, wait for that 205 break and hold. All right, so that's what I'm looking at in regards to Amazon. All right, so next I want to look at Nvda. So I will say that Nvidia is kind of, how should I put it? Nvidia's, I'm not a fan of how Nvidia's looking. Okay, I will say that. All right, I just, the fact that it's playing games right here. So as you guys can see, we're at resistance right here. Okay, and you rejected here, you played games here, right, and then you broke down, you retested, you mounted. So this level right here, this 140.7 area, is really annoying area right here. But what I will say is that that measured move that I talked about in the last video in our rising wedge pattern still has yet to play out. I mean, we went down, but we went down to like 137. So Nvidia does have the potential to head towards 135 all over again. That still is on the table, guys. I just don't see any signs of upwards movement. I just don't. Okay, and that can obviously change, right? But right now, considering where we are in regards to resistance, I mean, you see it here as well. We're on the 2-hour time frame now, but you see it here. I mean, you bounced here, right? You've mounted under this level. You rejected here. You bounced here as well, and now you're just doing it all over again. You're just mounting here. So either bears get trapped here and we just start to just fly up tomorrow, or we start heading further down. Now, another thing that's concerning about Nvidia is SMH. And I know we haven't talked about the semiconductor ETFs in a while, but that was only because they just weren't doing anything, guys. But now they're doing something. SMH. And so if we go to the 4-hour time frame on SMH, this is another thing that just does not look good to me. Let's go to the daily time frame. There we go. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. Okay, just not a fan. Now, what I will say, this is the saving grace right here. This can be, and this is why I said on Nvidia, it could be a bear trap. This is a piercing line pattern. Okay, this is a bullish pattern. So we could, and this is why I say look at everything, right? If you just looked face value at Nvidia and you were just like bearish, right? You just saw Nvidia. You guys get the idea. I'm not gonna pull up Nvidia again, but if you saw Nvidia and you were just instantly like, okay, that's absolutely bearish. Nvidia's gonna go down. It's at resistance, and you got puts. You probably got trapped. I'm not saying it's guaranteed or anything like that, but you probably got trapped. Piercing line pattern. Okay, this is a piercing line pattern. Feel free to Google it. This could easily be a trap, and we can start heading higher towards this gap fill at around 247. So I would definitely pay attention to SMH if we're trying to get an idea on where Nvidia is going. I would pay attention to SMH. We can easily do this, boom, and then possibly head further down. We'll see. But yeah, very interesting right here. Again, I'm just not a fan of it still. I just wouldn't, me personally, I'm just going to stay away until closer to earnings, but because I really want to see if Nvidia is going to pump before its earnings. If it pumps before its earnings, then that could be a bad sign. We'll see. All right, if it hits like 150 prior to its earnings, that might be a bad sign. Okay, that's just me. Do what you want with the information. I could be wrong. Again, piercing line pattern, might be looking at some type of trap, okay, some type of bear trap heading into tomorrow in regards to semiconductors. And so that's what I'm looking at in regards to Nvidia and the semiconductor ETFs. All right, that's pretty much, I mean, I guess we can go over IWM. So IWM, so whales are still loading puts on this thing. Okay, so that's just showing me that another drop is going to happen. Okay, another massive drop. Whales are still loading up puts on IWM. I will say that much. You got these 225 puts. We actually jumped on in this play in the Discord in regards to IWM. So you have these 225 puts for November 29th. It has the highest premium on this list right now. These 235 calls are very interesting. Very high ask over bid. But the premium is pretty low, so we'll see. But other than that, we jumped into this play. Our Discord bot alerted this as well. Our AI bot alerted this, so very interesting play here. And so we jumped into this play. We just been making a bag off IWM puts, so whales continue to trade this thing to the downside, so it's only showing me that the market is looking for another drop soon. So we'll see. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have for this video, guys. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, comment your thoughts below. If you agree, comment your thoughts. If you disagree, let me know. Maybe I missed something. Just keep it respectful as always. And until the next video, traders, you have a good one.